Roman Reigns has retired. Yeah, that's what they wanted you to believe. But last night? He came back, and he didn't come alone. The Bloodline just reunited. Roman Reigns. Jimmy. Jay. All of them. And they didn't cut a promo. They didn't ask for respect. They took it, with fists, chairs, and pure violence. Seth Rollins? Broken. Braun Breaker? Flattened. Bronson Reed? Thrown like dead weight. And Paul Heyman? He begged Roman for mercy, and got super kicked instead. This wasn't revenge. This was vengeance in full tribal form. You thought Roman was gone? You were wrong. Let's break down how the Bloodline just took over WWE all over again. So, when he disappeared after WrestleMania, when he was a no-show at Backlash, King and Queen of the Ring, and even Money in the Bank. Fans filled in the blanks. He was done. Finished. Gone. But last night? Roman Reigns came back. And he didn't come alone. Picture this, the final match of the night just ended. Seth Rollins stood tall after a grueling defense of the World Heavyweight title. Cameras zoomed in. The crowd cheered. Then, the lights cut out. No warning. No music. Just darkness. Then came a sound. Not music. Not a catchphrase. Just war drums. And in that moment, before even a single body hit the stage, you knew. Every hair on your arm stood up. Every throat in the arena swallowed hard. This wasn't just a return. This was a reckoning. And when the lights snapped back on, what stood at the top of the ramp looked more like a firing squad than a wrestling faction. Roman Reigns. JUSO. Jimmy USO. Unified. Armored. Stone-faced. No smiles. No pyro. No theatrics. Just violence in their eyes. They didn't walk. They marched. They didn't take the mic. They didn't throw up ones. They didn't say a single word. They took the ring with the silence of assassins. Seth didn't even get time to react. 1 second he was holding his belt. The next, he was crushed under a flying superkick from JUSO. Braun Breaker ran in next. The powerhouse. The rookie phenom. WWE's handpicked future. They folded him like an origami chair and left him twitching on the mat. Then came Bronson Reed. All 330 pounds of him thrown like a sack of meat across the announce table, shattered monitors and blood on the steel. And Heyman? He ran down the ramp in disbelief. Screaming, sobbing, begging. Hands up. Arms out. Pleading with his tribal chief. Roman stared at him. Cold. Empty. Then Jimmy stepped forward and super-kicked Heyman's soul out of his body. No words were spoken. No codes explained. Only blood was drawn. For months, every headline read the same thing: Roman Reigns off WWE TV indefinitely. Tribal chief officially retires from full-time competition. WWE moving on without Roman. Pundits praised his run. YouTubers dropped tribute videos. Even WWE's official Twitter posted a black and white reel of Roman's most dominant moments with a single caption: "Thank you, Roman." Fans made peace with the idea. Some were sad. Some were ready for the new era. But now? Every one of us just got played. What happened last night wasn't a comeback. It was a strategic ambush. The tribal chief didn't retire. He regrouped. He reloaded. He reawakened the bloodline and pointed it at WWE like a loaded weapon. And what's scarier than a dominant Roman Reigns? A Roman Reigns who faked his retirement to burn the entire company down. That's the thing. They didn't reunite. They reset. This wasn't nostalgia. This wasn't a reunion tour. This wasn't Evolution in 2014 or DX in street clothes. This was a new beast entirely. The old Bloodline stood tall, wore suits, flexed gold, and talked legacy. This one? They didn't want gold. They wanted wreckage. They didn't raise titles. They raised hell. And when it was over, when the referees were calling for medical staff and the commentary team was whispering in stunned silence, Roman stood in the center of the ring. Sweat pouring down. Shoulders heaving. Then he looked into the camera. One look. One line. Acknowledge this. Cut to black. Think about it. Seth Rollins. Out. Braun Breaker. Humiliated. Bronson Reed. Broken. Paul Heyman. Betrayed. And Roman Reigns? Not just back, but reborn. This isn't about titles anymore. It's not about family. It's not even about power. This is about punishment. This is about vengeance. We're not watching the return of a character. We're witnessing the rebirth of a myth. Roman Reigns faked his exit to rewrite the rules of engagement. The Bloodline didn't just attack the roster, they sent a message to the entire WWE universe: you thought this was over. You thought the dynasty died. You were wrong. Wrestling returns aren't new. Surprise appearances, heel turns, and reunions happen all the time. But what happened last night wasn't a storyline twist, it was a declaration of war. Roman didn't just return. He executed a months-long chess move. While WWE rebuilt its hierarchy, while Cody, Rollins, Breaker, and others carried the torch, Roman was watching. Waiting. Calculating. Letting everyone feel safe. Then, with a single coordinated strike, he reminded the world why he held the company hostage for over 3 years. And he did it without warning. Without promo packages. Without PR. He did it like a warlord in the dark, cold, efficient, and merciless. That's what we're here to break down. In this video, we're going to dissect how WWE pulled off this swerve without leaks. What the attack on Paul Heyman really means. Why Seth Rollins was chosen as the sacrificial first victim. And how this new version of the Bloodline could change the entire main event scene for the next 5 years. Because Roman Reigns didn't just come back. He reset the timeline. Everything you thought you knew about WWE? Throw it out. Let's break down exactly how the Bloodline just took over all over again. Roman Reigns didn't just disappear. He faded. Slowly. Quietly. Like a storm that had ravaged everything in its path and finally vanished behind the clouds, too silent to feel real, too heavy to forget. For over 3 years, Roman Reigns had been the gravitational force of WWE. Not just a champion, but the champion. Universal. Undisputed. Untouchable. From SummerSlam 2020 to WrestleMania 40, the era wasn't just defined by him, it was shaped in his image. Matches weren't about wins or losses. They were about proximity to power. Roman didn't defend titles. He demanded obedience. Then it all stopped. After WrestleMania 40, everything went quiet. No appearances. No interviews. No backstage sightings. Roman Reigns vanished from WWE programming like a ghost. The company gave no real explanation. At first, fans assumed he was injured. Others thought it was a storyline reset. But week after week, month after month, the silence held. And then came the whisper. Roman Reigns had retired. The story, when it finally came out, was crafted like a farewell poem. Quiet sources, softly spoken confirmations. Reports from WWE staffers said Roman had made the decision privately. That his body had taken too much punishment. That his legacy was secure, and his hunger was gone. No press conference. No 10-minute monologue. Just silence. His final match? A loss. Clean. Cody Rhodes, arm raised. The American nightmare fulfilled. The tribal chief dethroned. There was no closure. Just a shift in atmosphere. The Bloodline storyline collapsed. Solo Sikoa split off and went solo. Jimmy and Jay turned on each other. Paul Heyman looked lost without purpose. The grand empire Roman built began to crumble one cracked stone at a time. And all the while, the fans were fed the same narrative. Roman Reigns had done what few men in wrestling history ever do. He left at the top. But that was the story they wanted us to buy. Because if you really go back and examine the pieces, the signs were always there. Not of a man who was broken, but of a man who was planning. Preparing. Waiting. Take his final promo before WrestleMania 40. No direct retirement statement, but subtle language. Whatever happens next, he said, the Bloodline will survive. Not I'll survive. Not I'll stay on top. But the Bloodline. A family. A concept. A threat. He was laying groundwork. And WWE played right into it. They leaned into the retirement story hard. The company began pivoting. The commentary team spoke about a new era. Championships were rebranded. Seth Rollins took the World Heavyweight title. Cody took the spotlight. New talent was pushed forward. The timing was perfect. Roman left just as WWE needed a reset. And his absence created space for new faces, new storylines, and new opportunities. But here's the thing. Roman's not stupid. He's a strategist. He knows timing is everything in wrestling. When you step away, you let others think they've moved on. You let them feel safe. Because when you finally strike, they're completely exposed. Behind the scenes, the locker room dynamic changed. Sources reported Roman no longer traveling with the full WWE schedule. He wasn't at TV tapings. He wasn't working live events. But he wasn't gone. He was just somewhere else. Quiet. Watching. Heyman was no longer spotted with talent. No commentary. No guidance. Just distant appearances backstage with folded arms and unreadable eyes. Some said he looked worried. Others said he looked bored. The truth? He knew what was coming. Jey Uso started showing cracks. His singles push flopped. He never captured the same magic. Jimmy drifted into irrelevance. Without Roman, they weren't threats, they were footnotes. And that's what made it work. The world was so convinced Roman Reigns was finished, they stopped preparing for his return. Even WWE social media subtly erased him. No more tweets. No more Bloodline promos. Even in company montages, Roman's moments became fewer and fewer. A legacy buried while still warm. That's not retirement. That's misdirection. Because if you study Roman Reigns' career, there's one consistent theme: control. When he debuted with the Shield, he was the silent killer. In the early solo years, he was the company's golden boy, even when fans didn't want him to be. Then he snapped and built the Bloodline. Became the tribal chief. The man who controlled not just his narrative, but the entire show. Entire pay-per-views were rewritten around him. That kind of man doesn't just retire. That kind of man plays dead long enough to strike when it hurts the most. Look at the wrestlers WWE pushed in his absence. Cody Rhodes, of course, crowned as the People's Champion. Seth Rollins with his loud suits and louder title defenses. Breaker, pushed as the next generation's warrior. Reed, built up as a silent destroyer. What do all of them have in common? None of them are Roman Reigns. And all of them were just made examples of. It's no coincidence Roman targeted them. He didn't come back to pick a fight. He came back to expose a lie. The lie that WWE had moved on. Retirement wasn't an end, it was an illusion. That phrase, "Roman Reigns has retired," was repeated so often it became accepted truth. But truth in WWE is a dangerous thing. It's not about facts. It's about control. Whoever controls the narrative controls the crowd. Roman understood that better than anyone. So he stepped back. Let others claim the throne. Let Cody bask in cheers. Let Rollins wear gold. Let Heyman cry in interviews. And just when the world stopped looking over its shoulder, the silence broke. What makes his retirement more sinister is how real it felt. The physical toll was visible. The schedule reduction, the graying beard, the quieter demeanor backstage, all true. But in wrestling, truth is never the full story. Because behind the body, Roman's mind was still working. He let people think he was finished because that's the only way they'd let their guard down. There's historical precedent for it. In 1997, Shawn Michaels retired with a back injury. He returned 4 years later more dangerous than ever. In 2002, Hulk Hogan had supposedly wrestled his last match. Then came back to main event WrestleMania. In 2010, Edge gave a tearful goodbye speech only to return a decade later and headline another WrestleMania. Roman saw that playbook and rewrote it. No speech. No tears. No music video tributes. Just absence. He let people decide the story. And the story they chose was wrong. The truth? Roman Reigns didn't retire. He repositioned. He knew WWE without him would get hungry. That the crowd would demand new heroes. That management would crown new kings. And then, when the fans finally accepted his absence, he made them pay for it. He didn't return because he missed the spotlight. He returned because he saw how easily it moved on. The empire he built was already being painted over. And now he's here to burn the paint, and everyone holding the brush. Roman Reigns' disappearance wasn't a break. It was a siege. A king watching from the shadows while the usurpers threw parties in his throne room. And now the torches have been lit. The gates are down. The wolves are in. The era of Roman Reigns never ended. We just forgot who started it. When Roman Reigns left, the bloodline didn't just end. It unraveled. And at the center of that slow collapse were Jimmy and Jey Uso, the twin brothers who had once been the tribal chief's most loyal soldiers. Without Roman's iron control holding them together, the brothers didn't evolve. They imploded. Let's rewind. For most of the Bloodline era, the Usos were the tag team embodiment of Roman's dominance. Unified tag team champions. Muscle. Enforcers. Message senders. If Roman snapped his fingers, they acted. No hesitation, no questions. Jey, once dubbed Main Event Jey, was the emotional heart of the bloodline. Jimmy? The fire starter. Brash, bold, reckless when needed. Together, they were a complete system. But as Roman's grip tightened and paranoia grew, cracks formed. First in Jey. Then in Jimmy. And when Roman retired, those cracks split open. With the chief gone, the throne was empty. And instead of banding together to keep the bloodline alive, the twins turned inward, torn between loyalty, resentment, pride, and confusion. Jey, already damaged from years of being gaslit and manipulated, tried to step out on his own. He branded himself a solo star. Broke away from Jimmy. Took the crowd with him. Walked into Raw as a face, fist-bumping fans, and promising to do things his way. The crowd wanted to believe in him. They really did. But something didn't click. Without Roman, Jey didn't look free. He looked lost. His mic work became scattered. His energy and promos didn't carry the same weight. He wasn't chasing anything. He was just running, from his past, from his brother, from the bloodline. WWE booked him strong at first. High-profile matches, near-title shots, but eventually, the fire dimmed. Fans began to notice. Jay, once the hottest act in WWE during the Bloodline peak, was now just another guy with a ring jacket and a dream. Meanwhile, Jimmy fell into chaos. Without Roman to anchor him, or Jay to balance him, Jimmy spiraled. He played the anti-hero on SmackDown. Picked fights he couldn't win. Started unnecessary beefs with babyfaces and heels alike. One week he was interfering in title matches. The next, losing clean in 3 minutes. There was no strategy. Just noise. Some fans thought this was all part of a bigger plan. That maybe Jimmy was baiting Jay back into a feud. Maybe WWE was playing the long game. But behind the scenes, it was different. Sources backstage described Jimmy as disconnected. Creative didn't know what to do with him. One week he was part of a mid-card angle with LA Knight. The next week he was off TV altogether. The Bloodline wasn't just missing Roman. It had no center. No voice. No mission. Without Roman, the Usos weren't feared, they were floating. There were hints that Jay still had loyalty buried under the surface. Moments when his voice cracked during interviews. The way he avoided badmouthing Roman outright. The way he still wore red and black gear. Little clues. But he never picked up the phone. Jimmy, on the other hand, showed his scars more openly. In a backstage promo months after Roman disappeared, he said, "I held the Bloodline down. I was the one who came back. I never left my family. It didn't hit like it used to. Because Jimmy had no backup. No plan. Just words in an empty hallway." Their biggest low point came at Survivor Series. Neither Jimmy nor Jay were booked. Not even for a backstage segment. For two men who once headlined that very show with Roman, it was a brutal fall. WWE, for a while, seemed ready to move on. Tag titles were passed around between new teams. Jay worked a few short feuds with Finn Balor and Damian Priest. Jimmy showed up on commentary once in a while, mostly to talk trash that never led to anything. They weren't feared. They weren't respected. They were remnants. And then the injuries started. Jay tweaked his ankle at a live event. Jimmy suffered a rib injury during a botched table spot. Nothing serious, but enough to slow momentum even further. What followed was radio silence. For nearly 6 weeks, neither USO was on WWE programming. Fans moved on. LA Knight surged in popularity. The Judgment Day took over Raw. The tag division heated up again, without the Usos. And then something shifted. In early April, backstage rumors began to swirl. Quiet ones. Whispers. People spotted Jimmy and Jay at the WWE Performance Center, together. Not on camera. Not scheduled for anything. Training. 2 weeks later, fans noticed that Paul Heyman was suddenly backstage at both Raw and SmackDown. Not managing anyone. Just observing. Then came a cryptic tweet from Jay, a black image with nothing but the Bloodline's tribal logo, faint, burned, cracked. That image was taken down within an hour. But the message was clear, something was happening. Because here's what's important, Jimmy and Jay, for all their chaos, were never done with the Bloodline. They were just lost without it. They didn't leave. They were left behind. Roman's disappearance wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was abandonment. Roman had promised that the Bloodline would last forever. He said it was about family. About honor. About legacy. Then he vanished. No warning. No leadership handoff. No plan. He left Jimmy and Jay exposed. Vulnerable. Broken. But that's what made the return so powerful. When Roman walked back out last night, flanked by both Jimmy and Jay, it wasn't just a surprise. It was a reunion born out of survival. Roman gave them what WWE never could in his absence, purpose. Because deep down, the Usos were never built to be solo stars. Not really. They were warriors. Enforcers. Wolves. They thrived in packs. In structure. And Roman knew that. He gave them months to burn out. To fail. To experience the void of leadership. Then he returned, not to rescue them, but to reclaim them. The look in Jay's eyes during the ambush wasn't loyalty. It was hunger. The way Jimmy delivered that super kick to Heyman? That wasn't performance. That was release. A year's worth of frustration unleashed in one brutal snap. These weren't henchmen anymore. They were converts. Roman didn't have to convince them. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. He walked out, and they followed. Because the bloodline wasn't just about Roman's reign. It was about giving these men an identity bigger than themselves. And now, that identity has returned. Harder. Colder. More violent. The Usos didn't rejoin Roman. They became Roman. Whatever this new version of the bloodline is, it no longer relies on hierarchy. It thrives on rage. This isn't the same pair of twins who wore designer sneakers and laughed during promos. These are soldiers hardened by abandonment, fused by vengeance. The fall of the bloodline broke Jimmy and Jay. Roman's return turned that break into armor. It started like any other main event. Seth Rollins had just survived another war. Bruised, battered, breathing heavy but still upright. His hair clung to his face, streaked with sweat. His world heavyweight title was slung loosely over his shoulder. The camera cut to him in the center of the ring, soaking in the crowd's energy, doing his usual post-match strut. Classic Seth. Defiant. Charismatic. On top of the world. Then, without warning, the arena lights dropped. Total blackout. For 3 seconds, nothing but darkness. No Titantron graphics. No pyro. No glitch. Not even static. Just the steady hum of 20,000 people holding their breath. And then came the sound. Not music. Not theme. Just drums. Low. Heavy. Rhythmic. Boom. 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 Like heartbeats echoing through the void. The screen above the entrance ramp flickered to life. One image, the cracked tribal chief symbol. Not new. Not polished. Just a damaged relic, black and red, glitching like an old VHS tape. Then the drums stopped. One by one, 3 silhouettes emerged from the smoke. Roman Reigns. Jimmy Uso. Jey Uso. The crowd didn't erupt. They didn't cheer or boo. They froze. There wasn't even time to process it. No one was sure what they were seeing. Roman was supposed to be done. Jimmy and Jay weren't even booked. This wasn't just a return, it was an ambush wrapped in silence. No music played. No lights. No announcement. Just the 3 men walking slowly, marching, down the ramp. Roman in a sleeveless black hoodie. Hair loose. Beard full. No gloves. No gauntlet. Just fists. Jay, shirtless, his eyes locked on the ring like he was in a trance. Jimmy, stone-faced, chewing on the inside of his cheek, every muscle in his jaw twitching with restraint. In the ring, Seth's face twisted from confidence to confusion. He turned his head, like he expected backup to come running. Nothing. No Judgment Day. No Cody. No security. The bloodline stepped onto the apron in unison. Still no words. Still no music. Roman looked at Seth. Tilted his head. Then slowly stepped into the ring. And Seth, smart as he is, dropped the title. Put his hands up. He'd seen this movie before. Roman walked right up to him. Inches away. Eye to eye. Then smiled. One of those fake smiles. The kind you see right before the car crash. Right before the knife twists. Without warning, JUSO exploded into a super kick that caught Seth clean across the jaw. No delay. No hesitation. Seth crumpled like a folding chair. The crowd finally made noise, a rising scream of disbelief and shock. Jimmy was already moving. He rolled to the outside and yanked the steel steps apart like they were paper. Launched one half into the ring. Jay grabbed a chair. Roman stood still, watching. Then came the execution. Jay slammed the chair across Seth's ribs. Once. Twice. 3 times. The kind of chair shots you only hear in clips from the early 2000s. The kind that rattle through your chest. Jimmy followed up with the steps. Drove them down on Seth's back while he was curled up. Each shot echoing like a gunshot. The ring shook. Seth rolled to the edge, gasping for breath. Jay pulled him back by the hair. Then it happened. Roman stepped forward. Picked up the World Heavyweight title. Looked at it for a moment. Held it up to Seth's face. And dropped it. Right on his head. Not as a handoff. Not as a gesture. As a weapon. Seth didn't move after that. At this point, fans were screaming, not chanting, not booing, screaming. Some for security. Some just in panic. The commentary team had stopped speaking. You could see Michael Cole mouthing something off mic, likely calling for help. Then the music hit. Not Roman's. Not the Bloodlines. Braun Breakers. The crowd surged again as the young phenom burst onto the stage. No pause. Full sprint. This wasn't a run-in for glory, this was survival. He slid into the ring and charged Jay first, clotheslining him so hard his legs flew out. He turned, grabbed Jimmy, and hurled him over the ropes with a power slam. Then he locked eyes with Roman. For 2 seconds, they just stared. Breaker breathing hard. Roman unmoved. Breaker charged. Roman sidestepped and hit a REUNITE slam so clean it looked rehearsed. Breaker bounced. Then Roman backed up. And speared him. Not a wrestling spear. A shoulder through your sternum spear. Breaker folded backward in midair. Crashed to the mat and didn't move. Jay re-entered. Dragged Breaker's limp body to the corner. Climb. Splash. Brutal. The crowd was now in full chaos. Booing. Screaming. Cell phones shaking in people's hands. Security guards had begun appearing near the barricades, but none entered the ring. Then came the third man. Bronson Reed. No music. Just a lumbering charge down the ramp, face twisted in rage. This man was 330 pounds of brick and rage. And he made it to the ring fast. He stepped over the top rope, and Roman was already charging. Reed grabbed him midair. Held him. Then Roman reached down. Low blow. Reed doubled over. Jay hit a super kick. Jimmy hit a second. Roman picked him up for a Samoan drop. But this wasn't just a finisher. He walked to the edge of the ring, and threw Reed over the top rope, straight onto the announce table. It didn't break cleanly. It collapsed. Reed's body rolled to the floor like a dropped safe. Paul Heyman came next. He wasn't supposed to be there. His face was pale. He ran down, waving his arms. He wasn't yelling, he was pleading. Roman, please. You could read his lips. Roman, no. We don't need to do this. Roman looked at him. Stepped forward. Heyman dropped to his knees. Held up both hands. Almost crying. You're better than this. Jay stepped forward. Super kick. Heyman fell like a marionette whose strings had been cut. The crowd gasped. Audible no's from the front row. Heyman didn't move. Roman knelt next to him. Said something in his ear. We'll never know what. But Heyman's face crumpled. Then Roman stood, turned to the hard cam, and stared. Long quiet. Then he spoke. Just once. Acknowledge this. The lights cut again. When they came back up, the ring was empty. Seth, Reed, Breakker, and Heyman all lay broken around the ring. Chairs everywhere. Blood, real or staged, on the steel steps. No music. No outro. No pyro. Just carnage. And silence. This wasn't random. The people Roman Reigns and the Bloodline destroyed last night weren't just the ones closest to the ring. They were symbols. Strategic targets. Each one of them represented something Roman wanted to tear down, punish, or erase. This wasn't violence for its own sake. This was a message encoded in fists, steel, and shattered reputations. Let's break down every victim. Roman and Seth share a history that runs deeper than belts or brands. Before tribal chiefs and visionaries, before solo pushes and betrayals, there was the Shield. Roman, Seth, and Dean. 3 soldiers molded into a brotherhood of dominance. But Seth was always the one who struck first. In 2014, it was Seth who broke the Shield. He did it with a chair to Roman's back. That moment never really went away. Roman never forgot. And last night, he returned that pain, with interest. Seth has always been the one man who could say he made Roman bleed first. The one man who, even when Roman held 2 world titles, refused to acknowledge him. That pride, that resistance. It didn't go unpunished. When Jey Uso super-kicked Seth in the opening shot of the ambush, it was a full-circle moment. A karmic echo. But the true blow came from Roman himself. He didn't speak a word to Seth. No monologue. No insult. Just action. He picked up the World Heavyweight title and dropped it, right on Seth's skull. That wasn't about gold. That was about dismissal. That was Roman saying, "This title means nothing." You mean nothing. It was the definitive erasure of Seth's momentum. One that will be replayed in video packages and memes for years. And for Seth? The emotional damage may outweigh the physical pain. Because the worst part of getting destroyed by Roman Reigns is knowing he never once acknowledged you. WWE had plans for Bron Breakker. Everyone knew it. The son of Rick Steiner. Nephew of Scott. A hybrid of power and speed. Young. Intense. Built like a linebacker, wrestles like a main eventer. He was the next guy. A future face of the company. Roman made sure that future got delayed. Breakker's ambush wasn't just a beatdown, it was a reality check. A lesson from the old guard to the new blood. Roman didn't just defeat Breakker. He humiliated him. Breakker charged in like a hero and got dismantled like an amateur. He hit hard, but he didn't hit smart. And Roman punished that. Hard. The REUNITE slam alone flattened the hype. But it was the spear that broke the illusion. Breakker didn't just lose. He folded. Midair. That kind of moment stains your highlight reel. It puts a crack in the aura. Fans start questioning if you're really ready. Roman knew exactly what he was doing. Breakker wasn't targeted because he had a title. He was targeted because he had momentum. Roman cuts momentum at the knees. It's what he does. Breakker got his welcome to the deep end. And Roman reminded him, sharks eat fast swimmers first. Reed didn't get the same build-up as Rollins or Breakker, but make no mistake. His destruction was surgical. Bronson Reed had been climbing. Slowly, steadily. A monster among men. Not flashy, not loud. Just brutal. He was the kind of guy who could walk into a match and flip the mood instantly. Dangerous. Unshakable. Roman made him look disposable. The Bloodline didn't even give Reed a full fight. They triple-teamed him, overpowered him, and tossed him. Like trash. Like an afterthought. That wasn't just strategy. That was a statement. Reed's whole brand is strength. Invincibility. Being the unstoppable tank. So Roman turned him into a crash dummy. The image of Reed's body hitting that announce table will haunt WWE fans for months. It didn't shatter in a clean spot. It crumpled under him. The sound was sickening. The bounce, ugly. And when it was done, no one checked on him. No refs. No medics. Just a camera cut away. That's what Roman wanted, to take a man who looked immovable, and move him out of the picture. Bronson Reed didn't just get hurt. He got exposed. And in a locker room built on reputation, that's worse than pain. But the most emotionally brutal part of the ambush wasn't a spear. It wasn't a chair shot. It was what happened to Paul Heyman. The man who stood beside Roman longer than anyone else. The one who shaped the Bloodline's mythology. Who called Roman the head of the table. Who handled contracts, manipulated narratives, whispered strategies. Paul was the voice. And last night, he was the victim. When Paul came sprinting down that ramp, it wasn't part of the show. He wasn't playing a role. His panic felt real. His voice cracked. His hands trembled. He wasn't trying to protect Seth or Breaker. He was trying to stop Roman from becoming something worse than what he'd been before. And Roman let him speak. Let him beg. Then nodded. And Jimmy superkicked Heyman so hard he fell lifeless. That wasn't punishment. That was closure. The Bloodline no longer needs a mouthpiece. They no longer need plans, policies, backstage influence. What they need now is destruction. And Paul doesn't fit that vision. Heyman gave Roman his empire. Now he's just another piece of the rubble. That kick did more than break a mentor-student bond. It ended a lineage of manipulation, strategy, and guidance. In a twisted way, it also freed Roman. Because when you no longer need Heyman, you've evolved past politics. You've become pure instinct. Roman isn't playing chess anymore. He's flipping the board. And Heyman? He's a relic. And relics get buried. Symbolism in the sequence, the order of the beatdowns wasn't coincidence. Rollins, the past. Breaker, the future. Reed, the threat. Heyman, the voice. Roman silenced them all. He didn't just hurt people. He cleared a path. He broke the narrative structures that were being built in his absence. Rollins was supposed to be the workhorse. The champion of the people. Gone. Breaker was supposed to be the next big thing. Reduced to a highlight reel of failure. Reed was becoming the unstoppable monster. Stopped. And Heyman was the bridge between old Bloodline and new WWE. That bridge has been burned. This was Roman saying, "You had your ideas. Now I'm rewriting the script." And it worked. Because now, every division in WWE is in chaos. The world title scene? Shattered. The tag division? No leaders. The veterans? Silenced. The future stars? Crushed. There's no direction. No order. Just one question left echoing in everyone's mind: who's next? And more importantly, who's safe? At first glance, what happened in that ring might seem like an ambush. A return soaked in chaos. But look closer. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a temper tantrum or a power grab. It was vengeance. And vengeance, true vengeance, is never random. It's calculated. Personal. Strategic. To understand the brutality Roman Reigns unleashed, you have to understand what vengeance means to him. Roman didn't return to right a wrong. He returned to punish the entire system that allowed him to be forgotten. There's a critical difference between revenge and vengeance. Revenge is emotional. It's impulsive. It's a response to being hurt. Vengeance is ritual. It's methodical. It's not just about making someone feel pain, it's about restoring order. In Roman's mind, order was broken the moment he stepped away and the world kept turning without him. This wasn't about Seth Rollins, Bron Breakker, Bronson Reed, or even Paul Heyman. This was about a world that dared to believe the story could continue without its centerpiece. Roman let it happen. He let WWE crown new heroes. He let Seth Rollins call himself the workhorse. He let Cody carry the company banner. He let Breakker be framed as the next phenom. He gave them space. But that space wasn't mercy. It was surveillance. Roman was watching. Measuring. Calculating how far people would go to erase him from the picture. And when the moment came, he didn't just return to reclaim what was his. He returned to remind them that this story only ever had one author. That's why the attacks were carried out in silence. No promo. No entrance music. No explanation. Because vengeance doesn't speak. It acts. Vengeance doesn't justify itself. It simply is. And the scariest part? He didn't gloat. When Seth lay broken on the canvas, Roman didn't stand over him with a belt held high. He dropped the title on his head like trash and walked away. When Paul Heyman begged for mercy, Roman didn't lecture him. He let Jimmy do what needed to be done. That's the new hierarchy. Roman isn't the captain anymore. He's not the tribal chief delivering orders through a megaphone. He's the storm. And storms don't explain themselves. They destroy. Now, look at the psychology of his targets. Each one wasn't just physically vulnerable. They were symbolically threatening. Seth was the living reminder that Roman could be surpassed. That someone who came from the same roots could rise without him. Breakker was the corporate future. The machine's next big plan. The heir to the throne, until Roman set fire to the throne. Reed was the rogue variable. The man with no allegiance, who could have joined Roman, challenged him, or ignored him altogether. Roman erased the option. And Heyman? Heyman was the ghost. The reminder of everything Roman used to need: strategy, language, diplomacy. Roman's attack on Heyman was symbolic. It said, I don't need a mouthpiece. I don't need an architect. I am the weapon. Vengeance, in Roman's case, isn't even personal anymore. It's cultural. It's tribal. This wasn't about enemies. This was about offenders. To Roman, WWE offended the code. The unspoken law he lived by, that greatness doesn't fade. It isn't replaced. It isn't moved on from. When he left, WWE didn't honor the code. They didn't preserve the island. They started building new temples on top of his ashes. So now he's tearing them down. Vengeance doesn't strike when it's angry. It waits until the strike means something. Roman's reappearance didn't come at WrestleMania, or the Raw after Mania, or even during a title match. It came on a night when no one expected him. A non-title moment. A random Raw. Why? Because vengeance loves the element of disbelief. It thrives in silence. It strikes when the wounds have scabbed over, just in time to rip them open again. This was never about getting even. This was about reminding everyone who let their guard down that Roman Reigns doesn't ask for relevance. He takes it back, with interest. When you consider how calculated the timing was, it becomes even more unsettling. Roman didn't just strike during Seth's moment. He waited until after Seth had survived a brutal match. Until the crowd had invested emotionally. Until the fans had believed they were watching the main event clean. Then Roman rewrote the ending. That's how vengeance works. It waits until you're certain you're safe. Then it takes everything. And he didn't stop with the individuals. By targeting Seth, Breakker, Reed, and Heyman in a single strike, Roman took aim at every layer of WWE structure. The past. The future. The enforcers. The narrative. All gone. All broken. And with no speech. No contract signing. No general manager announcement. That silence isn't absence. It's authority. Roman didn't come back to join the conversation. He came back to shut everyone up. So why did it feel so surgical? Because Roman Reigns is the rare kind of wrestler who thinks like a general. He's a master of optics. A student of mythology. He knows how people see him. He knows the power of image. The spear. The stare. The single phrase into the camera. Acknowledge this. He knows that 5 seconds of silence can echo louder than a 20-minute promo. That's how you know this wasn't random. It was warfare. Tribal warfare. And in Roman's tribe, betrayal isn't forgiven. It's punished. So when the crowd cheered others in his absence, when the company gave titles to new stars, when even Heyman aligned himself with uncertainty, Roman remembered. Not emotionally. But intellectually. He remembered who moved forward without asking permission. And he marked them. One by one. This is where WWE enters unfamiliar territory. Because vengeance has no end point. Revenge can be satisfied. A match, a title, a redemption arc. Vengeance is a way of being. Roman isn't back to complete a story. He's here to erase the book. This isn't the same faction that dominated WWE for 3 years. It's not the Bloodline you remember. The group that returned last night is something darker, colder, and far more dangerous. This Bloodline didn't return for championships. They returned for vengeance, and for control through fear. Let's start with the most obvious difference: silence. The original Bloodline relied on words. Roman's promos were scripture. Heyman's speeches were strategic artillery. Every moment was layered in explanation: why they attacked, why they dominated, what the family meant. This version says nothing. They don't need catchphrases. They don't raise one finger in the air. They don't speak of legacy or loyalty. They don't even look like they're having fun. The new Bloodline doesn't posture. It punishes. Every action last night was done without commentary. No speeches. No signals. Just movement and destruction. Even Roman's posture was different. Before, he was regal. Confident. Suited up. His presence was theatrical, part king, part god. Now? He walks like a war criminal returning to the scene of his crimes. Sleeveless hoodie. No gloves. Hands bare, like he wants you to see what he'll hit you with. It's Roman stripped down to the parts that kill. This change in presentation signals a psychological shift. Roman no longer sees himself as a ruler who needs followers. He's a destroyer who's chosen weapons. And those weapons? Jimmy and Jay. They've changed too. Let's talk about Jay first. Jay was the heart of the original Bloodline. The conflicted one. The emotional weight. The soul. But this new version? That man is gone. Jay didn't flinch when they assaulted Seth Rollins. He didn't hesitate when he dropped a splash on a motionless Braun Breaker. And when Jimmy superkicked Paul Heyman, Jay didn't blink. No internal conflict. No hesitation. The inner turmoil is over. What's left is pure instinct. Jay no longer wrestles with his conscience. He follows the code of the Bloodline. Not Roman's commands, but the Bloodline's instinct: eliminate weakness, preserve fear, destroy resistance. Jimmy's shift is more chaotic. Where Jay has gone cold, Jimmy has become feral. In the past, Jimmy was the impulsive one. The wild card. But he still showed flashes of humor, charm, and swagger. That's gone. Now he looks like a man who spent months watching the world forget him. Someone who finally snapped and decided to start hitting until people remembered. His attacks weren't tactical. They were personal. That super kick to Heyman wasn't just betrayal. It was vengeance for being left behind. And there was no remorse. Jimmy was always the twin with something to prove. Now he's proving it with every blow. So what exactly has changed? Everything. Purpose, the old bloodline fought to stay on top. This one fights to burn everything beneath them. Philosophy, before, they built an empire. Now, they're salting the earth. Unity, in the past, Roman gave orders. Now, they move together. No eye contact. No gestures. Just synchronized violence. It's not obedience. It's belief. The hierarchy has blurred. Roman still leads, but not as a dictator. More like a prophet whose vision the others have adopted. Jimmy and Jay are no longer bodyguards. They're apostles. Even the absence of Paul Heyman matters. Before, Paul was the stabilizer. He added logic to chaos. Strategy to impulse. Without him, this bloodline is completely unchained. It doesn't talk. It strikes. It doesn't plan. It reacts. They don't want to run WWE. They want to undo it. So what's their goal? That's the terrifying part, there might not be one. The old bloodline had goals. Retain the titles. Extend the reign. Prove dominance. This new iteration doesn't seem interested in belts. No one picked up Seth's world title after the attack. Roman held it, looked at it, and dropped it like garbage. No one gestured toward a title belt. No, I want that. What they wanted was suffering. Which tells us this is no longer about gold. It's about punishment. The new bloodline doesn't want control through championships. They want compliance through fear. That puts the entire WWE roster in a state of paralysis. Because how do you prepare for a group that isn't chasing anything? You can't block their path. They have no destination. And that makes them unpredictable. That unpredictability is the single most dangerous trait a faction can have. If they don't care about belts, merch, or endorsements, they can attack anyone, anytime, for any reason. And WWE has no defense mechanism for that. Even management appears clueless. No statement. No explanation. No reprimand. Triple H hasn't addressed it. No general manager has stepped forward. Security stood frozen as the carnage unfolded. It's as if everyone was caught off guard, and is now in hiding. That's how quickly the energy shifted. One moment, WWE was coasting on a new era of possibility. The next, that era was dragged out of the ring and left in pieces. The bloodline isn't playing by the rules anymore. They're not trying to win. They're trying to undo. Undo the titles. Undo the stars. Undo the very foundation WWE tried to build without Roman. The terrifying part? They look like they're just getting started. No one saw it coming. Not the fans. Not the commentators. And definitely not the locker room. What happened last night sent a shockwave through WWE, not just because of who returned, but how. No build-up. No storyline groundwork. No slow-burning clues. Roman Reigns and the Bloodline walked back into the company like nothing had changed, and then changed everything. Backstage, the response was instant and electric. Phones lit up. Wrestlers watching on monitors stopped mid-conversation. Production assistants scrambled. Veterans looked stunned. Younger talent looked terrified. There was no official memo sent out about the return. No forewarning. It was chaos. Some wrestlers, especially those who built themselves up in Roman's absence, were furious. Others were confused. And a few? A few were afraid. Because this wasn't just the return of a top guy. It was the return of an era. An era of dominance. Of closed-door meetings. Of segments being rewritten at the last minute. Of politics disguised as storytelling. Of blood. To fully understand the locker room's response, you have to split it into factions, each one impacted differently. These are the names currently holding down the upper card. The ones who carried WWE while Roman was away. For Cody Rhodes, Roman's return is a direct threat to everything he's built. Cody fulfilled his dream at WrestleMania by dethroning Roman. That win was supposed to mark the end of an era. Now? That ending has been voided. Insiders say Cody was seen backstage pacing after the ambush. He wasn't scheduled to appear on that show, but he showed up late, clearly tipped off once Roman's presence was confirmed. No comments. No interviews. But the look on his face said enough. Cody didn't look surprised. He looked angry. And here's why that matters: Roman didn't touch Cody last night. He could've. He didn't. That omission was intentional. It's a slow-burning threat. Roman didn't need to strike Cody. Just his silence shook the table. And for someone like Cody, who spent the last year cementing himself as WWE's moral center, this forces a moral test. Does he act now, or wait? Does he strike first, or prepare for a longer war? Meanwhile, Seth Rollins doesn't have that luxury. He was the first to fall. His pride, his status, and potentially his body, damaged in a single night. Word from backstage producers is that Seth will be off TV for a while, to sell the attack. But in reality, it's a reset. Seth has been one of the few stars who never feared Roman, never bowed. Now he has to recover, both physically and in terms of narrative. Seth's supporters say he'll bounce back stronger. Others say Roman made a point: arrogance has consequences. Drew McIntyre, currently building a reputation for brutal honesty both on-screen and off, reportedly said backstage, "Of course he's back. Blood never dries." Simple. Cold. On brand for Drew. He's dealt with Roman before. He knows what's coming. Damian Priest, holding the Money in the Bank briefcase, is walking carefully. He didn't comment publicly, but multiple sources say he was seen reviewing match footage of Roman's previous defenses. He's smart. He knows the Bloodline now operates outside the championship structure. If he cashes in on the wrong night, it won't be a ref stopping him, it'll be 3 angry men with steel chairs. For the middle of the roster, Roman's return isn't just a headline, it's a ceiling. LA Knight, who's been skyrocketing in popularity and finally being booked seriously, now finds himself in uncertain territory. He's the kind of character who thrives on moments, on mic time. Roman's presence eats moments whole. Knight didn't comment directly but made a vague reference in an interview: "I've seen storms roll in before. This one ain't the first, and it won't be the last." Translation: he's aware. And possibly preparing. Austin Theory, once considered a golden boy and now floating, sees Roman's return as both threat and opportunity. He posted a cryptic photo on Instagram of himself staring into a broken mirror. No caption. He's either planning something, or spiraling. Sami Zayn's case is emotional. Sami was once embedded in the Bloodline. Then he turned, fought his way out, and helped break the empire down. Seeing Roman return, with the Usos, must have hit hard. Sources say Sami walked out of the building early, skipping post-show media. That speaks volumes. Sami's story has always been personal. The idea that it's not over, after everything he gave, everything he suffered, is deeply unsettling. And Kevin Owens? He hasn't said a word. But if history is any indication, silence means rage is building. While Roman's immediate threat doesn't extend to the women's division, the ripple effects absolutely do. Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, and Becky Lynch were reportedly locked in conversation backstage after the show, watching replays of the Bloodline ambush. Not because they fear physical confrontation, but because they know how WWE tilts when Roman is active. Segment time gets eaten. Title pictures get reshuffled. Momentum gets buried. If the Bloodline wants to assert dominance over all of WWE, the women's division may eventually be pulled into the crossfire. And if that happens, don't expect them to sit back. Especially not Rhea, who has the kind of violent confidence to throw a chair back at Roman if needed. Guys like Edge, Randy Orton, and AJ Styles, legends with nothing left to prove, watched the ambush with a different lens. They've seen dominant factions before. Evolution. The Shield. The Wyatt family. But none of them returned without words. This level of quiet brutality is new. Orton, when asked about Roman backstage, reportedly just muttered, "He's not coming back to wrestle. He's coming back to burn." That might be the most accurate read of the night. From a production standpoint, Roman's return has thrown everything into chaos. Segments will need to be rewritten. Feuds derailed. Creative had planned a multi-month story arc for the World Heavyweight title. That's now in limbo. One source close to WWE's writing team said, "It's like we had the entire summer mapped out, and someone just dropped a nuke in the middle of it." But others, particularly old-school veterans, see this as brilliant timing. Ratings will spike. Merch will fly. And unpredictability makes the product hotter. That's the double-edged sword of Roman Reigns. He disrupts everything. But he makes everything matter again. The mood backstage now is a mix of wariness and admiration. People respect what Roman can do. But they fear what he's willing to do to make it happen. This isn't about whether he'll go after the belt. It's about who he'll go through to prove he doesn't need it. The Bloodline doesn't want gold. They want silence.